killed your child. You see, without believing that lie, I would have to face the guilt of my own experience. And because of that, I think I understand this trap of choice that really imprisons so many. As you can tell, Linda and I somehow endured. God blessed us, and we were able to stay together, which is very, very rare, and we got married 5 years later. But over the next 20 years, we did struggle with her bouts of depression and self-esteem issues and the buried guilt of her lost motherhood. The life that had been sucked away from her and forgotten by everyone, including me, but not her. I know and believe that the gift of motherhood is stamped in a woman's heart by God, and that life cannot be ripped away without devastating and permanent consequences. That wound is forever, and the problem is not solved. That healing retreat, Rachel's Vineyard, was an absolute godsend for us. We learned about it through watching a video of the March for Life in Washington, just like this. So God does work in amazing ways to help find a healing and truth for others. But I know that there are millions of men out there. We know that for every woman who has an abortion, and we're talking about extraordinary numbers in the 50 millions, that for every woman there's a man, there's a father out there that was involved or not involved in some way. And I want to tell all men who have participated in an abortion or have had their children aborted without their consent to let your hearts out of prison, that there is hope and healing available. And I urge you to find the courage and to find the help that is available. I thank God for His strength and His courage that's within me and Linda and all of these brave women up here to have the ability to express our experiences of pain and healing and hope. We now live with forgiveness and peace. And now by being silent no more, I want to help to stop that madness. And I know that one by one, through our telling others and to participating in these events, that we can help to do that. I thank you all very much for being here, and God bless you.
Thank you, Chuck and Linda. Okay. We've got a group of women here from Phoenix, and so we're going to hear, I call them my Phoenix team, and we've got a Reno team coming in a few minutes. So we've got groups of women and men that raise money so they can come out here and share their stories. So let's give them our attention. Thank you, dear.
And thank you to all of you, because you are our heroes for standing here, especially those of you who are young, in school still, that are taking this message with you back to your schools and so on. We're very grateful for being here. My name is Karen Williams. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. I was 21 years old when I made the worst decision of my life, to take the life of an innocent human being. I bought a product that a previous Supreme Court determined was a safe, effective, and legal remedy to a crisis pregnancy. I now believe I was sold a bill of goods that ended the life of my unborn child and has severely affected my life physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually for almost 2 decades. I was a junior at Michigan State University when I visited Woman Care Planned Parenthood in 1987. The stunning confirmation of my crisis pregnancy was delivered to me while I stood in a hallway surrounded by strangers. Life as I knew it had just changed for the worse. Through hot, angry tears, I sobbed that I could not be pregnant. I would have no part of a baby-limited future. I was in a disconnected panic. Confused and alone, I turned to Planned Parenthood. Its catchy name appealed to some strange sense of logic in me. Okay, I shall plan my parenthood. They care for women there. That's what I thought. Abortion was not the ideal, but it was a solution. An easy way out that could be kept a secret. A choice. It all sounded too good to be true. A very attractive clinic employee clad in business attire assured me that I need not feel afraid or guilty for choosing the product of abortion. She herself was a satisfied customer with a testimony that seemed to indicate gratitude for the ultimate power of being able to control the size and spacing of her family. This was my final edification. Even though my boyfriend agreed to marry me, I would make the final, fatal decision for our baby. I chose my body, my plan, and my convenience over his life. I bought an abortion, and I was never made aware of all of the small print. So on a bleak January day 25 years ago, I was given a small pill and told to relax. 15 minutes later, my tiny 10-week-old son, his small frame caught on ultrasound only weeks ago, was now a red liquid sitting in a plastic container at the doctor's feet. I am reminded often that abortion is still good for women, that it is a solution to the problem of a crisis pregnancy, that it prevents us from being punished with unwanted children. Let me tell you that this is a bold-faced lie. I was duped. The sights, sounds, and smells of that day still haunt me, 25 years later. There was no one around me to advocate for the life of my son, no one to speak for him, and to break into my particular crisis of the moment. The choice didn't really feel like a choice at all. I wasn't choosing between Cheerios or Frosted Flakes. I was in a desperate place, and I did what many young, unsupported college women do when faced with a desperate situation. I purchased an irrational, illogical, and fatal procedure called abortion, and my child paid for this with his life. When a surgical procedure ends the life of any other human being in any other situation, someone usually pays a hefty lawsuit, not to mention facing criminal charges. Will Planned Parenthood pay for my mental health counseling? How about all the years that I lost with my child? Will Planned Parenthood restore the life of my family member? Has Planned Parenthood ever been held accountable for the fraudulent services that they are selling to unsuspecting, vulnerable customers? Where is the class action lawsuit? Where is the amicus brief? Where was the Supreme Court in protecting Michael's rights? The years following my abortion included inexplicable depression, alcoholism, addiction, and other things. They can all easily be traced back to the death of my child at a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic. I am a living statistic, but thanks be to God and His grace, working through people like you, like Rachel's Vineyard, and like so many other churches around us, and priests and clergy, my story does not end there. I found miraculous grace, healing, and recovery from our great physician, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Praise the Lord.
And the sacraments of His church. Telling my story first in the confessional and later to others whom I trusted, thrust my secret out of the dark cavity of numbness where I had placed it and into God's marvelous light where I could find forgiveness and healing. The dirty little secret of abortion must be exposed for what it is. It is a failure of love, a failure with fatal consequences. We all deserve better than the lie that is abortion. Women are not in a position to make life and death decisions when they are isolated and in a desperate crisis. What we do need is support and love, real woman care. I stand before you today to offer my personal experience as a woman who still mourns the loss of her unborn child. Out of love for my son and my obligation to you, the real truth must be told about abortion and its countless victims. Abortion is not a choice. It is a deadly procedure that causes death and multiple casualties. It is a product with lethal consequences. And if it were really examined for what it is, there is no package large enough that could contain the disclaimer. There is no law firm stable enough that would defend its claims in court. There is no commercial spot long enough that would adequately explain all of the risks involved. Abortion is not good for consumers. It is not good for men, for women, or families, or any member of society. It must be condemned and banned. And finally, we are our brother's keepers. We are all responsible for creating a just society where the most fundamental rights of our unborn brothers and sisters are protected. Let us continue to work together to end the killing, just like you're doing here today. It is my hope that I can be a light and witness to others, so that the horror of abortion will exist only as a sad and futile relic of a bygone era in our nation's history. And this is why I am silent no more.
Hello, I'm Teresa. I'm one of hundreds of thousands of middle-aged women who've carried around a secret for decades. The kind of secret that can cause nightmares, flashbacks, and unsolicited anger and rage. Some women with this secret turn to substance abuse, risky or dysfunctional relationships, or suicide. I'm one of the 53+ million women who's responsible for killing an unborn child since the Supreme Court made it legal in 1973. I grew up in a Christian home. However, in my home and in my church, we never talked about sex or about how to develop healthy male-female relationships or about the power of sexual attraction. As soon as I was on my own in my early 20s, I learned there are plenty of men who are happy to teach young women like me about sex. And in exchange for attention and acceptance, I found myself compromising the biblical standards I had been taught. Subtly, I allowed myself to be seduced into a physical relationship. It only took the right opportunity and some spiked punch, and I was spending the night with the man. I started getting nervous about the time that my monthly cycle was due, but I rationalized those thoughts away. However, now I realize the power of this physical attraction thing, and I decided I better go get some birth control. I'd never been to a doctor except one my parents had chosen for me, but I knew that you could get the pill confidentially at Planned Parenthood, so I went there. They asked me to leave a specimen before I went in the exam room, and I didn't think anything of it. A few minutes later, a nurse came in and said, "You're 6 weeks pregnant." I remember the immediate feeling of shock. I was numb, like I was in a thick fog. They said, "It's just a blob of tissue at this point, and what do you plan to do about it?" They didn't show me pictures or offer to do an ultrasound or discuss my options. And I thought, since abortion was legal, it must be okay, especially since this is just a cluster of cells, right? They sent me home with an appointment for an abortion in 2 weeks, telling me if I couldn't afford it, there were government funds that would cover it. There were no pregnancy counseling centers then, and I didn't know where to turn for advice. Adoption never even entered my mind. All that I could think of and picture was my parents' devastation. What I couldn't picture was myself as a single mom. Suddenly, all the things that I rationalized away about this relationship became crystal clear, and I knew that the man that I slept with wasn't going to be there for me. It sounded like a quick, easy way out of this crisis, so I just numbed myself emotionally and went to the abortion appointment. It wasn't until I was lying on that table that my emotional force field broke down, and I realized the enormous gravity of what I was doing. Afterwards, I felt used, dirty, worthless, and very guilty. I didn't feel like I had a right to live. Luckily, I reached out to an older woman of faith who helped me find God's love and acceptance and forgiveness. Otherwise, I would have ended my life. It's been more than 30 years, and I still have occasional nightmares and flashbacks. I still think about the child that I might have given birth to. The scars will always be there, and I can't take back what I did. And although I found God's forgiveness and mercy pretty quickly after my abortion, it took me decades to forgive myself. Thanks to a post-abortion Bible study, I was finally able to forgive myself and let go of the guilt. I've been forgiven and blessed despite my poor choice. I understand God's love and mercy so much better now. I've learned the hard way that if you have sex outside of the context that God designed for it, which is a permanent monogamous marriage covenant between a man and a woman, He doesn't remove the consequences. However, He can and He does make something good out of our tragedies when we allow Him to. That's why I'm silent no more.
Thank you, sweetie. All righty. Speak up. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Ord, and I'm from Chandler, Arizona, but I'm originally from the Bay Area. When I was 22 years old, I had my abortion. The next 2 decades, it remained a dark secret. I grew up in an abusive, alcoholic household, and it was always my dad's way or the highway. My opinions were unwelcome, and I came to believe that not only did what I have to say not matter, that I didn't matter. I got married at age 21, We had been married for a little over a year and had a 7-month-old baby girl. My husband was between jobs when I became pregnant with our second child. When I told him the news, he was furious, and he blamed me for not being more careful. He argued how in the world were we going to support another child. Then out of the blue, he insisted that I have an abortion. I was in shock and disbelief. I called my mom for support, and to my surprise, she sided with my husband. I felt rejected and abandoned. I was scared that he would follow through with his threat of leaving me and our child, so out of fear, I called and scheduled the appointment to terminate my pregnancy. I wish it would have been harder to arrange at the hospital, but because it was legal and covered under our insurance plan, I went through with it. I bought a product that was bad for me. What I thought I was getting and what I received were worlds apart. In paralyzing fear, I quarantined my conscience in order to be at peace with my husband and keep my family intact. As I emerged from this state of fear, I realized that what I had been sold was literally a dead end. The day of my abortion, my baby was not the only one that died. A part of me died too. Abortion seemed so accepted by society, but afterwards I felt so isolated and alone. My husband and I's relationship and once happy life together spiraled downwards. We numbed our pain with cigarettes, drugs, and alcohol. On the outside, I remained cool and collected. After all, nobody could know the secret that I kept buried deep inside. No one could ever know the horrible sin that kept me from being the person that I used to be. After high school, I followed a dream and I went to nursing school to be a pediatric nurse. I had worked for 2 years in hospitals and also at Stanford in the children's cancer ward. After my abortion, I quit my career as a nurse. I didn't know why at the time, but years later learned that it is not uncommon for post-abortive men and women to move away from something that subconsciously reminds them of the trauma of their abortion loss. I spent the next 22 years suffering in silence, riddled with shame, guilt, and self-hatred. There were countless nights I cried myself to sleep, longing to hold my baby. I wondered what our child would have looked like or grown up to be, and my husband and I drifted further and further apart. I wonder why these debilitating after effects were not explained to me by the staff at the hospital. I wonder why they didn't at least mention to me that such suffering might result from procuring an abortion procedure. About 12 years ago, I went to an Arizona Right to Life talk at my church with my best friend. The talk was hard to hear, but inspiring, and afterwards, I mustered up the courage to tell my best friend my secret. We stepped into the chapel, and I told her about my abortion. I expected rejection, pity, and disgust. Instead, I received acceptance, non-judgment, and sympathetic love and support. I couldn't believe it. She hugged me, and she told me that she loved me. That night, something changed in me, and I started to heal. I am not alone. I have heard many stories like mine. There are millions of men, women, and teens suffering in silence who also bought the lie of abortion. Approximately 43% of all women before the age of 45 will have had an abortion. An unexpected crisis pregnancy can cause us to act out of fear and panic and end up on the wrong end of a fatal, deadly procedure. What we need is compassion. We already judge ourselves. God knows our hearts, even though so many have been hardened with denial and pain. I used to say I was pro-choice. After all, how could I say I was pro-life? I would be a hypocrite. But God kept putting people in my path to help me stand up for what I truly believed in my heart. God has given me my voice back. Life is precious, and all lives are precious at every stage. Love and respect will win over hatred and judgment. For everyone who is suffering in silence, know that there is hope and healing available, and that you are loved. Because you never know who is suffering in silence, it could just be your best friend. If you or someone you know has been touched by abortion, There is a beautiful healing retreat available called Rachel's Vineyard. It has helped me to forgive myself for my part in ending my child's life, and also to forgive my husband for not supporting us. We named our son Matthew, and he is now recognized as a beloved child of God. We also have 3 adult children and 8 grandchildren, 2 of which are in heaven. Abortion touches all families in some way. I believe that someday I will be reunited with Matthew, and this gives me great hope. I will no longer keep him a secret. Society says men and women suffer no negative psychological effects after abortion. I know differently. That's why I'm telling my story, and I am silent no more.